With my 35 years of experience, our team at US Asset Management can deliver professional investment management, financial planning to help you target your goals, and even specialized divorce financial analysis if you need it. We are here to help you make better decisions with your money. Call US Asset Management today and let's get to work in your financial future.
The left is siding with illegals, attacking ICE, and fighting to let non-citizens vote. Republican Kelvin King is a graduate of the Air Force Academy, Air Force veteran, and conservative businessman. As Georgia's Secretary of State, Kelvin will put Americans first, root out corruption, clean up voter rolls, and restore confidence in our elections. The other candidates had their chance and failed. Republican Kelvin King for Secretary of State. Leadership Georgia voters can trust.
Pro-Trump warrior Steve Gooch won't just cut property taxes in Georgia. He'll throw them straight in the wood chipper.
Senior citizens on fixed income shouldn't be forced from their homes. Neither should veterans who have served our country and fought for our freedoms. And neither should anyone else for that matter. Frankly, these crazy property taxes are un-American. I'll tear them to shreds. We'll make home ownership great again.
Steve Gooch for Lieutenant Governor. Toughest tax cutter Georgia's ever seen.
Do you already have your investments with Fidelity? I'm David Cross with US Asset Management. Did you know that you can assign your investment management to my team and put my 35 years of experience to work for you? You simply assign us as your investment manager and you keep the same username and password. Professional management, and you get to work with someone who shares your values. Call US Asset Management today and put us to work for you.
What happens in Georgia gets revealed one by one as the facts are unsealed. From the pit comes what they don't want you to see. When the daily nugget of truth is dropped with your host, BKP.
And we're back. I'm your host, BKP, and you're watching BKP Politics on voiceofruralamerica.com. Voiceofruralamerica.com. How are you today? So let me bring this down just a little bit. Looks a little high on the volume. So yesterday, I know we did not drop we did some work over the weekend, but we did not drop a podcast or an article yesterday on our Substack. I took Sunday and Monday. Today is Tuesday, April 29th, correct? Is that today, 29th? But I took Sunday and Monday, and I watched the Atlanta Press Club debates. I've watched the 11th District Republican, the 1st District Republican. I watched the Lieutenant Governor race, only the Republican at this time. I watched the Republican Governor's race. I watched the Democrat Governor race debate. And today I'm going to watch the Secretary of State and the Attorney General. Now tomorrow, I've got a couple stories I'm working on, and tomorrow I'm hoping to do a little recap on the Lieutenant Governor after that debate, another recap of the Secretary of State, and then do an Attorney General. I've had a lot of people ask me about Attorney General, and so I'm hoping to do an Attorney General between the two candidates, Bill Calzert, State Senator Bill Calzert, and State Senator Brian Strickland for the Republican side. So I hope to get that done tomorrow. So yesterday in the Georgia governor's race, wow. Now before we get started, everything we put up is on our Substack, our Rumble, our YouTube, and also X. And Facebook. So Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, and X are voiceofruralamerica.com. Substack is Vora, V-O-R-A, Vora, at BKP Politics. And everything we break down, we've got a full line of Substack articles on Rick Jackson that substantiate, go into a deep dive on everything we're going to discuss today. Okay? But yesterday was the governor's race in the debate. And let's see exactly where I'm going to get this started. How about this? So, Rick Jackson says he's going to deport every criminal illegal in the state. Okay? Burt Jackson is going to deport every criminal illegal in the state of Georgia. That's what he continues to tell you over and over. That's what he plans to do. But yesterday, the New York Post put out an article. So Rick Jackson has said multiple times in his campaign that he will deport criminal illegals. He will be the toughest governor on deporting and getting criminal illegals out from under, out of the state of Georgia, stop them from harming our children, and so on. But yesterday, the New York Post around noon, just about 3 hours before the debate started, they published an article claiming that Rick Jackson, or stating that Rick Jackson has had an illegal or plural, several, we don't know, working at his 47,000 square foot mansion in Alpharetta, Georgia. This home is 47,000 square feet. Obviously, it takes a full staff. I mean, Rick Jackson is a billionaire. Now, he continues to tell you the rags to riches story. He did it yesterday in the debate. We're not going to go back on that. We have that in several of our videos. But I'm just going to tell you, I'm not insensitive to foster care. I'm not insensitive in any way whatsoever of taking care of and feeding the homeless, sheltering the homeless, and taking care of our children in the state. But Rick Jackson, you do not have to tell me anymore your sad, sad story. Okay? I don't need to hear it anymore. You can continue to tell it everywhere you go, but for me, I'm good. I'm not trying to sound insensitive. Because I have said this, and I've put it in articles, in, we'll just say 15 years of covering every possible campaign out there. This campaign is the phoniest campaign I've ever been around. Anything I've ever covered. And I have yet to be convinced. I've yet to be convinced that Rick Jackson wants to go to Atlanta after he has, actually, we'll show you this, he has gardeners painting his mulch. I don't know what you do about your mulch in the springtime, but Rick has his mulch painted. Yes. So, that being said, okay, this guy has a full staff at the house. I cannot be convinced that he wants a $185,000 governor's job just because. Not buying it. But, so yesterday, Georgia GOP gubernatorial contender Rick Jackson employed illegal immigrants at his mansion, court documents show. All right. So, and then yesterday that became a little contentious at the debate. This article dropped at 12 o'clock yesterday. I'm going to try to get it correct here and pronounce the names. The front runner in the Republican primary to become Georgia's next governor, whose platform calls to make the Peach State the #1 in the nation for deporting criminal illegal immigrants, failed to vet the citizenship status of workers at his own mansion, according to court documents obtained by the New York Post. Now, first of all, let me clear up. Rick Jackson said yesterday in the Gubernatorial, the governor's debate, Republican governor's debate on the Atlanta Press Club, Jackson said yesterday he would deport criminal illegals. I just want to clear up, when they come across the border, that's when they're criminal. This definition of when they are criminal, interesting. Okay. So billionaire healthcare executive Rick Jackson has been involved in a workers' compensation dispute after one of his laborers suffered a fall while painting the mulch at his palatial Cumming, Georgia estate in March 2023. According to the petition filed last month, the Georgia State Board of Workers' Compensation erred in denying Fernando Ortega's claim. I think that's what it is. Fernando Ortega's claim for benefits because it didn't consider evidence that Jackson hired the man without checking his work authorization. So he got denied his workman compensation benefits, but they say it was before considering evidence. So there's a court case coming. Let me get this straight here. Now, what you see on the screen is the, I think 22 acre, I'm not for sure, of Rick Jackson's home. 47,000 square feet. All right. And you'd have to have a full staff to maintain this inside and out, working around the clock to keep this place up. We don't know what the entire staff is, and we'll get to that momentarily. So this is Rick Jackson. He was deposed twice in the workplace dispute. He was deposed. That's on record. The 71-year-old maintained a long-standing workforce of multiple laborers performing landscaping, right? Performing landscaping. Pull this down just a little further. I think we're a little hot today, right? There on the mic. There we go. Performing landscaping and priority maintenance work for decades. Including individuals without work authorization who nonetheless performed continuous employment for the employer, the March 18th filing by Ortega's lawyer states. So they worked there for years, according to the document. In the related deposition, Ortega's superintendent, Ivan Rebelado, testified that he had never filled out his taxes using a Social Security number. He's never filled out his taxes using a Social Security number. While Rebeldo, I think that's the name, lawyer, blocked lines of questioning about his client's immigration status, Jackson was deposed twice in the dispute. in October 2023 and January 2024, and denied knowledge that Ribaldo could not lawfully work in the U.S. Both Ortega and Ribaldo acknowledged that they were Mexican nationals in the court records. Asking Jackson this question, do you recall that during the deposition, Ribaldo, testified that he was undocumented, didn't have a social security number or work permit? A lawyer asked the Jackson Healthcare founder and CEO during the 2024 sit-down. Now, you're going to find Jackson's been paying this person, all right? This is the supervisor. Never filed taxes, never had a social security number. I wasn't there when he testified. In his deposition, Jackson responded, did you know that he was undocumented? The lawyer also asked. No, Jackson said, who also admitted he had never vetted new hires using mandatory I-9 forms which ensure employees are eligible to work. You have to do an I-9 form to verify an employee is eligible to work. Jackson said, who admitted he never vetted the new hires. Now, I know what he's going to say here because I think he said it. I feel strong of what he may say because he said it yesterday in the debate that he didn't review everybody that worked at the property. Jackson claimed at other points in the interview that he did not directly hire workers and only engaged with the superintendent who managed the landscapers and maintenance personnel. Ribaldo, in his deposition, said he's worked as a landscaper for the executive for 18 years. Ortega brought the workman's compensation complaint against Jackson's Investment Group, LLC, and RIG Real Estate, LLC, which is owned by the former firm. Jackson serves as CEO of both, but was unable to affirm in his deposition who precisely his employers were. I know that sounds confusing, he answered, but most of if we have other employees, we usually hire them through JIG or another entity. I'm talking about if JIG had employees, we hire them through another entity. I'm not sure that we have any direct employees. From the payroll standpoint out of JIG Real Estate, however, Ortega was paid more than $31,000 by JIG Real Estate LLC between May 2022 and April 2023, according to copies of nearly 24 checks reviewed by the Post. RIG Real Estate was paying this guy $31,000, paid him directly. They have the checks. And he was not legal to work. The workers' comp appeal will be heard in Forsyth County, Superior Court, May 14th, 5 days before the Georgia primary. All right. So this is a court case that Jackson's involved in where there's an illegal working as a landscaper at his 47,000 square foot property. So we're going to play, let's play a couple of them. They might be close to identical, not for sure. Let's see. Let's go with this one first. This is from the debate yesterday of Burt Jones asking Rick Jackson about the claim, does he have illegals working at his house?
Asked him, you don't have any illegals working for you right now? Or in the past?
I don't know.
Oh.
Here's the reason why. You're talking about a domestic person that somebody hired. I hired thousands of people. I hire thousands of people a year, Bert. I know you have about 6 yourself, but I hire thousands of people. Other people hire them. We obey the laws. We use E9 verification.
It's just a yes or no answer. It's just asked him. You don't have any illegals working for you right now? Or in the past?
I don't know.
Oh.
Here's the reason.
You don't have any illegals working for you right now?
Am I supposed to answer it again?
Well, you have 30 seconds, Mr. Jones, to respond.
I just asked him. You don't have any illegals working for you right now? Or in the past?
I don't know.
Oh. You don't have any illegals working for you right now?
So, Burt Jones yesterday asking if he has any illegals working for him right now. Do you have any illegals working for you right now? So yesterday it was discovered Georgia GOP gubernatorial contender Rick Jackson employed illegal immigrants at his mansion, court documents show. Now, what is if Rick Jackson was not going through the state, if he was not going through the state, not that it would make it okay that he worked illegals at his mansion there at this enormous 47,000 square foot home. But if he wasn't going through the state right now with his claim that he's going to be the toughest on deporting illegals in the state, in the country, he's going to deport criminal illegals. He has commercials out. This one kind of stung in the debate yesterday. So let me give you a couple more here. The AJC covered it this morning. Let me make sure I have that up there, right? Attack ads explode in real life in Georgia GOP governor's race, okay? And they're calling it a Jackson setback. A Jackson setback. Since his surprise February campaign launch, Jackson has been ubiquitous, blanketing the airwaves, holding town halls across the state, and landing media attention. But Monday marked his first debate, and it showed. All right, it did show. Jackson, he didn't have a good debate performance. He did not. It showed. One, everywhere he goes, he does have, and I did confirm this, he has his cards, his index cards. I call them the big index cards that he has with his talking points. He takes those everywhere. And we'll show you something in a minute. Now, Jackson stumbled through several exchanges and suffered the most damaging moment when Jones pressed him over a New York Post story citing court documents and details that detail a failure vet the citizenship status of workers at his Metro Atlanta estate. You don't have illegals working for you right now? Jones asked twice. I don't know, Jackson said. I don't know. Pausing for a beat before saying that his healthcare firm and other companies hire thousands of people a year. We obey the laws. Jones saw the opening. It's just yes or no. I asked him if he has illegals working for him right now, and he said he did, and then he said he didn't. After the debate, the Jackson campaign said it's just like a corrupt politician to attack Rick over someone hired by his landscaper. They avoid the fact that the guy in question received all these checks directly to him from the Jackson Company. Is it J-I-G, the Jackson Company, right? So, quite an interesting debate, but that wasn't it. That wasn't it. Yesterday, we have, now, they're calling it a corruption bombshell. Now, this is, again, that's the AJC. So what we really have yesterday is Chris Carr, Attorney General Chris Carr, doing what I feel, interviewing for a job with Rick Jackson. I really think that. I would be shocked if, when this is over, if something was to take place or something was to happen, Rick Jackson became the next governor, got elected. I kind of got a feeling Chris Carr would get a job. Now, in the debate series, you're allowed to ask each other a question. You get one question to ask your opponent, and you can pick any one. Well, obviously, everything Jackson had was written down, right, on a card. Everything. His opening statement, I'll show you in a minute. He could not look forward. He had to look down and read his statement. He couldn't look at the camera. His closing statement, he had to look down. All through the debate, he had to look down. But they know ahead of time they're going to get the question. They're going to be allowed. The candidates, every candidate knows ahead of time that they're going to be allowed to ask a question of one of their opponents. There were several on the stage. So Rick Jackson already had his question written out, ready to go to ask Attorney General Chris Carr. And, you know, some really good acting, because it's not like Attorney General Chris Carr didn't seem ready to answer the question. There's no pausing whatsoever. Chris Carr doesn't look to be caught off guard. We will show you that right now. The corruption bombshell. In a stunning move, Jackson accused the lieutenant governor from the stage without evidence of blocking legislation from Republicans who backed his rivals and demanded up to $100,000 in campaign contributions just to have a meeting. Carr seconded the criticism, saying that he had heard similar concerns about Jones using his office to benefit the campaign and the family business interests. Now, I don't know that that's true. I don't know that it's true. But I will say this. We're going to show you in a minute. Don't think for 1 minute. Don't think for 1 second that Rick Jackson does not know how it works. He knows how it works, and he is preparing. He's trying to run for governor, and he's preparing to do some things, in my opinion, to benefit himself. That's my opinion. So, I'll be honest. Chris Carr said, I'll be honest. Now, I find it interesting that Chris Carr now, right, is ready to launch an investigation, or would launch an investigation. No, not the 2020 election. No, not Phony Willis. No, not Fulton County and the ballots or the election crimes that have been determined by evidence. No, not at all. But he is willing to look into, if he wasn't running for office, Rick Jackson's claims about Burt Jones. So I'll be honest, if I wasn't running in the race, there's enough out there that I would have started an investigation, Chris Carr said yesterday. So I'm going to show you a couple things because remember, in this back and forth and exchange, Burt Jones accuses Rick Jackson of paying for endorsements. And we'll get to that in just a minute, all right? An anti-Jones alliance emerged. Carr asked Jackson a friendly question about how Jones could loan the campaign $20 million after reporting a net worth of roughly half that amount. So keep in mind, when Chris Carr got his opportunity to ask a question, he asked Chris Jackson a softball question about Burt Jones. He lobbed one up about Burt Jones loaning his campaign $20 million after reporting a net worth of roughly half that amount. Jackson gladly took the opening, saying, "The math doesn't add up." Jones said he donated to his campaign to let voters know he too has skin in the game. So when it came time, keep that in mind, when it came time to ask a question, Chris Carr lobbed the Attorney General a real nice softball up to Rick Jackson, as though Rick Jackson was ready for it. Now, can't make this up. All right. And then you have Rick Jackson coming back with a well-written, and you can see him read it, a well-written there is Burt Jones gets illegals out of jail free. I'll get into that in a minute. Rick Jackson wants to lower your taxes. I got to keep going with the I want to go with the before I get to Rick Jackson wants to lower your taxes part. So, this is Jackson yesterday for the most part. For the most part yesterday, Jackson had to look down at his cards. He had to. He very few times. If Jackson was looking up at the camera trying to answer a question, he was fully stumbling over his remarks. He would look down at his note cards, and he would also get a little fumbled and out of order and seemed a little out of sorts time to time, searching for the answers written on his note cards. So he looked down the entire time. And I want to complete, before I go to endorsements, I want to complete the Chris Carr setup. Now, let me get my video I want to play. Now, here's Chris Carr. Chris Carr put this campaign ad out yesterday. He put this campaign ad out. But what we're going to do is we're going to play you what Chris Carr put out, and then we're going to play you the entire exchange. All right?
I wasn't running in this race. There's enough out there that I would have started an investigation. I would have. But because I am running, I think that would be inappropriate for me not to do it. But I'll tell you, I think it's wrong. I think it's unethical. If true, it could be illegal. And look, the Georgia people do not want somebody running for governor that sees the governor's mansion as an extension of their business empire. They want somebody that's earned it and done it. And I think I am the better choice. If I wasn't running in this race.
Now that is the campaign. That is the campaign video that Chris Carr put out. Chris Carr put that out. Now keep this in mind when they got to the portion of the debate where candidates can pick any of their opponents to ask a question, Chris Carr lobbed up a real nice softball question about Burt Jones loaning his campaign $20 million, basically claiming Burt doesn't even have that kind of money, and getting Rick Jackson as a businessman, Mr. Jackson, what do you think of that? And Jackson adds, well, in any business, that doesn't add up, or something to that reference. So that was a nice little softball for Rick Jackson to answer. Now, that was the campaign. That was the campaign ad that Chris Carr put out. Now, watch the entire exchange and look for yourself how this is set up. How it's totally set up between Rick Jackson and Chris Carr.
And I don't turn to ask a question of the candidate of your choice.
Yes, my question is for General Carr. General Carr, is it appropriate for the lieutenant governor, a statewide elected official, to threaten legislation of members if they supported his political opponent or demanded up to $100,000 in campaign contributions just to have a meeting?
Rick, I appreciate the question. And, you and I are opponents in this race, and so we probably disagree on some things. But I think we probably agree on one thing, that Burt Jones should not be the next governor of Georgia. You've been campaigning. I've been campaigning. I've heard from folks saying, did the lieutenant governor actually use his official office to help benefit himself financially or his family? I have heard people ask, is it true about these threats that folks are getting from his staff and from him? Personal conversations that are had. Folks are saying, is it true that bills were passed or not passed, or committee hearings held or not held, all based on who was supporting the lieutenant governor, or you or me or some of the other folks that were here? And look, I'll be honest, if I wasn't running in this race, there's enough out there that I would have started an investigation. I would have. But because I am running, I think that would be inappropriate for me not to do it. But I'll tell you, I think it's wrong. I think it's unethical. If true, it could be illegal. And look, the Georgia people do not want somebody running for governor that sees the governor's mansion as an extension of their business empire. They want somebody that's earned it and done it. And I think I am the better choice.
Mr. Carr, thank you. Mr. Jackson, your response, and then we'll go to Mr. Jones.
Look, this is the reason I joined this race. It's time for people not to be trying to make money off of their office and the power and so forth like that, and to use your bully pulpit to threaten people. It's just unethical from my standpoint. And we need to focus on you and what your problems are. And that's what I'm focused on benefiting you, not me.
Mr. Jones.
It's just amazing that he can sit here and lie with a straight face, but actually he lied about his illegal employees a little bit ago, so I guess this is par for the course with him. Look, there were two House reps above Representative Hilton and Representative Deborah Silcox that are supporting General Carr over there for governor. They got their bills through, no problem. There was nobody, just because the people that you have paid to endorse you might not have gotten some of their bills done, that they want to blame me for it not happening. So there was nobody holding anybody to the fire, feet to the fire. Like I said, there was plenty of Carr supporters that got bills through this past session. And so, but once again,
Mr. Jones,
you don't know how to tell the truth, but you do it with a straight face. I got to give it to you.
Time
didn't kill any bill, or you didn't kill any bill as a result of politics this session.
We let go through the process like it does every session.
Just like you're not answering the question.
No, I mean, I said,
Yes or
I said
no?
there was plenty of your supporters that did it. So
Okay.
You can learn a lot about
I
something.
think you've all had your say on this one. Gentlemen, we're going to move on to Mr.
Is next.
Thank you.
Okay. So, that is the full exchange back and forth. The entire exchange. Okay? And, you know, let me just say this. Chris Carr, let me get there. Let's see if I have it here. There it is. Wow, I don't have my screen is not correct, so I don't know what I might be missing there. Anyhow, Chris Carr, right here. Keep in mind, he went into this debate at only 6%. All right? Chris Carr went into the debate at 6%, single digits. All right. Now, that being said, Chris probably has to look for a job. Seriously. Chris Carr went into voting started yesterday, according to this poll, at 6%. He's not even out of single digits. Now, Joan, his wife, and Chris have worked in the system basically almost their entire adult life. Both of them. I mean, Joan and Chris have worked in the system somehow, some way, and I'm talking about the political system here since their young adult life. And we'll stay focused on Chris Carr here. Keep in mind, Chris Carr was vice president and general counsel for Georgia Public Policy Foundation. In 2003, it's 2026. That's 23 years ago, right? Correct? Do the math. In 2003, he joined Johnny Isaacsen's Senate campaign as the manager after he was Johnny Isaacsen's Senate campaign manager. After Isaacsen won in 2004, Carr became deputy chief of staff, then chief of staff for about 6 years until 2013. Governor Deal appointed him commissioner of the Georgia Department of Economic Development from late 2013 to 2016. In November 2016, Nathan Deal appointed him, Chris Carr, Attorney General, to finish out the term. He won a full terms in 18 and 22. So the only way he got Attorney General was appointment, and then in 18 and 22, he rode Governor Brian Kemp's coattails and being elected. And in Governor Deal's office, he was the commissioner of the Georgia Department of Economic Development. So I'm just speculating here. I'm just speculating. But don't get caught off guard if Chris Carr, let me get one more up here. I want to find another one. I had it just a minute ago. Don't get caught off guard if Chris Carr, let me show you something here. You may not be able to see it on the screen. gets a job with Rick Jackson. Here you go. Chris Carr, I know it was in 2022, but Shane Jackson, Rick Jackson's son, gave him $2,500. And in 2022, Richard L. Jackson Jackson Healthcare, he gave Chris Carr $7,600. So don't get caught off guard. Jackson, if Jackson was to win the governor's race, don't get caught off guard that Chris Carr would become part of his staff, because Jackson does know the staffing business. He does know the medical staffing business very well, became a billionaire, but international trade and working with other countries on international business and things of that nature, to him, Carr may look like a benefit. So to me yesterday, Chris Carr, 100%, he's only at 6% in the polling. He's probably, well, I don't know if he's going to get out of the race because it's already, the election's already running. But those questions were softballs yesterday and trying to make it sound like that Burt Jones' office should be under investigation. So our question, and I'll say our question, many of us out here, Chris Carr, you say if you were not running for office, you think there's enough there to investigate, but you don't find enough to investigate what took place in 2020, the election. You don't find enough reason to investigate things that the state election board has actually brought to light. You don't think you have enough information to investigate Phony Willis's office after what she did after being removed from the case. We have a list of multiple things that we would be very happy that you would open an investigation. But yesterday what you did, Chris Carr, is working with Rick Jackson, try to attempt to create some kind of big deal that's going on in the lieutenant governor's office, right? Going on in the lieutenant governor's office that has to have an investigation. Now, there's a couple more things I want to cover today before we get out. And tomorrow we're going to cover actually Rick Jackson saying he's going to give you back your tax money, because I want to go over property tax. Remember about, was it a week ago? Let's switch gears. Remember, because Burt Jones brought up you bought your endorsements. And you remember it got some people upset on social media. It was about 2 weeks ago. I said, watch for, I have a very strong source that I have a lot of respect. Watch for Rick Jackson to start dropping money into campaign contributions into the state, Georgia State Leadership PAC in the House Leadership PAC, the Georgia State House Leadership PAC, which is controlled by Speaker John Burns. Watch for that to happen. Watch for these contributions, campaign contributions, to start happening and endorsements to start to come out. I got a lot of pushback saying, why do you deal in political rumor? Well, then you're not in politics, all right? Because the political rumor circle, which whether you like it or not, it's very loud in the state of Georgia. So I'm going to show you a couple things. Although Jan Jones is not going to be returning, I want to go through a couple of these. not going to, and they're in the state house, not going to be returning next year, but she is the Speaker pro tem. She endorsed, and there you have another endorsement right there. And there you have Chuck Martin, another endorsement, State House endorsement, right? And there you got Rick Townsend, another State House endorsement, right? And there you got Lisa Hagen. Is that how you say it, Hagen? Another State House endorsement. And here's another State House endorsement, Rick Jackson. And here's another State House endorsement, Rick Jackson. Well, there's another, Lauren McDonald, another State House endorsement, Rick Jackson, right? So we got here. Keep going if we have any more. There's another State House endorsement, Rick Jackson. There's one more, right? Jacqueline Ford. There's another State House endorsement right there. There's another one right there. And we're going to stop at John King. So a couple weeks ago, and they're not done endorsing State House endorsements. In fact, I received a phone call yesterday from a state rep that said he has received 2 phone calls from Rick Jackson trying to put pressure on him to endorse him. Yes. Now, no one has called me and said, that they have received any campaign donations. And let me just say this, and I don't know exactly how Rick Jackson is doing this, but politics, it's surrounded by dark money, plausible deniability. It's surrounded by put it in this account, then transfer it to this account, and then transfer it to this account. It's a total, campaign finance is a total disaster, a total mess, and for the most part, as corrupt as anything you would find. Well, I mean, in the old days, someone walked into the bank and had a firearm and robbed the bank. And you thought those were the bad guys. Those are the ones you thought were the bad guys. No, we have campaign finance. So anyhow, I show you all of those endorsements. And they're not just because they like Rick Jackson. You will see down the road somewhere campaign donations. Now, the reason I bring that up is Rick Jackson, right? Is Rick Jackson the kind of guy that would, how do you want to put this? Is Rick Jackson the kind of guy that would make campaign donations that would benefit his business? So I was thinking this one right here. This one caught me a little bit. John King. And John King came out. He is the insurance commissioner. And John King came out and endorsed Rick Jackson. And I got to thinking, why did John King, the insurance commissioner of the state of Georgia, come out and endorse Rick Jackson in such a bold way and go on the campaign trail with him? And Major General John King endorses Rick Jackson for governor. He's John King, the insurance commissioner. All right. And then we have this one here. Thanks, John King, for your strong endorsement today and for joining the Teletown Hall tonight. And then you have, you don't have to take my word for it. This is another graphic here with John King, the insurance commissioner of Georgia. You don't have to take my word for it. John King of Georgia is a former police chief, retired 2-star major general, and the first Hispanic elected statewide in Georgia. So why would John King, right? Now, when asked, so you ask the question and you leave it up to the AJC, all right? You leave it up to the AJC, and the AJC asks the question, right? Ask and you receive. So gubernatorial candidate Rick Jackson earned Insurance Commissioner John King's endorsement in the Republican primary with a simple act. And what was that simple act? He asked me for my support. This is John King's statement when asked. He asked me for my support. No one else did. It was that simple, right? He wants to make it sound like it was that simple. Well, I was just out here. I'm the insurance commissioner. And Rick Jackson, hey, it's not like I know him. Wink, 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 right? He asked me for my support. No one else asked for my support. King said last week in Waycross following a press briefing related to South Georgia's wildfires, in my world, that matters. He asked for my support. No one else did. King said, in my world, that matters. Jackson also impressed King with his insights on how to fix health insurance issues. Wow, how to fix health insurance issues. How to fix those issues. I bet you that Rick Jackson is really, really ready to help John King fix health insurance issues. And I'll tell you why I think so. King's office has led the transition to a state-managed Affordable Care Act marketplace. So Georgia has an Affordable Care Act marketplace. Okay? And King's office leads the transition. And King sought out Jackson for his experience and expertise in running a healthcare company specializing in staffing. I'm telling you, you can't make this up. So what I think you're hearing is Jackson wants the state of Georgia. See, the state of Georgia has their own state-managed Affordable Care Act marketplace. Yes. And King sought out Jackson for his expertise and experience in running healthcare companies specializing in staffing. Now, I'm going to tell you why I think that, all right? King surprised many early this month when he backed Jackson, who's never held public office, over fellow state government colleagues, Attorney General Chris Carr, Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, and Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. So, now, why would King go looking for a Rick Jackson? First of all, John King, insurance commissioner, is no stranger to Rick Jackson or Melody Jackson. So here's what I'm going to tell you. Don't forget, we showed you, and we're going to show you here again in a minute, Melody Jackson and Rick are in cahoots. One of my favorite words. They are in cahoots. It's not like Melody Jackson, Rick's wife, is over here doing this, and Rick's over here doing this, and they have no idea what the other one's doing. And I'm going to tell you why I bring that up in a minute. Do you think it was really unbeknownst to Rick Jackson, possibly, that she gave money to John Ossoff? Because when we put up that Melody Jackson gave money to John Ossoff and Act Blue, we got a lot of pushback from some of the viewers and the readers out there that Melody Jackson, why, it's her money. She's a professor at Georgia Tech. She can spend her money any way she wants, right? That's the pushback we got. So right here, what you see on the screen, you see John King, Melody Jackson, on the same day, 8/23/2022, gave John King $7,600, right? And then you see Rick Jackson, her husband, JIGRJ Inc., same day, 8/23/2022, they both gave John King $7,600. Melody and Rick gave John King $7,600, $14,200 on the same day in 2022. Now, John King's the insurance commissioner. No, I don't think it's a coincidence, because Georgia now has, right? Georgia now has its own Affordable Care Act. Now here is Rick's wife. This is Melody Moore Jackson. She's a PhD. She's a professor at Georgia Tech. And we showed you this week how Melody Jackson, here's the exact ones, September 21st, 2025, she gave $1,000 to John Ossoff. She has given to Act Blue. May 27th, 2025, she gave $500 to John Ossoff and gave another donation to Act Blue. And then on February 19th, 2025, she gave $1,000 to John Ossoff. That's a Democrat, by the way. Let us remind you, that's a Democrat. Her husband, Rick, is running as a Republican for governor, and the sitting Democrat, John Ossoff, another $1,000. So let's get back to donations, or let's get to the insurance commissioner, John King. And let me see if I can get something here. Let me ask AI a quick question. Let's ask AI a quick question. So let's go to AI. Georgia Insurance Commissioner John King, does he oversee the healthcare insurance companies that operate in the state of Georgia? Do they fall under his office as far as regulating? And also the new Georgia Affordability Care Act, the new program in Georgia, does he oversee that in that office?
Yes, he does. As Georgia's Insurance and Safety Fire Commissioner, John King oversees and regulates private health insurance companies operating in the state. That includes licensing them, reviewing their rates and policies, enforcing consumer protections, and things like mental health parity rules. Georgia Access, the state's ACA marketplace, what people often call the Affordable Care Act program here, is actually a division under his office. So yes, his department runs that too. It's the place where folks shop for those subsidized plans. His office handles the private insurance side and the exchange, while Medicaid and Peach Care fall under the Department of Community Health instead.
Okay, so that seems like that could be the right guy in the right place for Rick Jackson. And let me tell you why. Okay? Because in the state of Georgia, We have let's see. In the state of Georgia, according to, and this is where my biggest concern is with Rick Jackson running for office, we've uncovered a lot of stuff. This is one of my biggest concerns with Rick Jackson trying to make these moves. We talked about telehealth the other day. Around 20 to 22 rural hospitals in Georgia are at risk of closing, with about 10 to 11 at immediate risk. Now, Rick Jackson said that Governor Kemp called him up, all right? Governor Kemp called him up during the pandemic and basically said, could you, no, you don't have to compete. There's no compete contracts. You're just going to get the contract from the state. We're going to get the money from the federal government. We're going to pay you. I'm not saying the governor's office said charge whatever you want, but the green light went up for, put the fees at where you think they're appropriate. And handle the staffing in the state to help us out during COVID. That's what he said. Picked up the phone. Now, here's another thing that you need to know about rural hospitals in the state of Georgia. Rural hospitals in the state of Georgia, they have staffing issues. Now, I do not know, I want to be perfectly clear, I do not know what staffing issues or I do not know what staffing that Jackson Healthcare, we do not know here what contracts they have with hospitals. Those are private. So I can't pick out a certain hospital and say Jackson Healthcare provides the staffing here. Jackson Healthcare provides the staffing at this. I can't do that. Those are private deals. I can't find out how much rural hospitals owe Jackson Healthcare. And I'm going to tell you why I bring that up in just a minute. I can't tell you right now, hey, this rural hospital owes Jackson Healthcare X amount of money and they're about to go bankrupt. Those numbers and those things are not public. You got it? They're not public. But what I do know is Jackson Healthcare has their tentacles in almost all hospitals almost in the state of Georgia. And they got their tentacles and they got their relationships with these hospitals during COVID because they are the ones that had the contract with the state. Now, the reason I bring this up is these major, monstrous hospital, the North Side, Piedmont, I mean, the list goes on. I don't want to leave any of them out. In Atlanta and, Gainesville and down here in Canton, these big hospitals, they have staff. They have staff, but the rural hospitals don't have the staff they need. You could go to a major hospital in Atlanta where healthcare is in Atlanta, and you can go to major hospitals and specialized nurses, physicians, you name it. They live in the general area and they have access to those people. But high quality, specialized healthcare professionals, rural hospitals have to use, a lot of them have to use the traveling nurse, the traveling physician, the traveling what is it, the pulmonologist or whatever, the traveling specialist. These hospitals, the rural hospitals, have to use those agencies those agencies to get traveling care for patients in these areas. Now, we are on the verge of Georgia of around 20 to 22 rural hospitals in Georgia are at risk of closing, with about 10 to 12 at immediate risk. Reports of the groups like the Center for Healthcare Quality and Payment Reform highlight this due to ongoing losses, low margins, and recent coverage drops. Specific names that pop up in risk: Washington County Regional Memorial Center in Sandersville, Irwin County Hospital in Ocilla, and Fannin Regional Hospital in Blue Ridge, Flint River Community Hospital in Montezuma. Fannin Regional Hospital in Blue Ridge. That's right where I'm at. Now, these hospitals are struggling, all right? And they could go under. They could. So here is, I asked AI a question because, you see, Rick Jackson's healthcare, Jackson Healthcare, they do not receive direct payments from insurance companies. They do not. They do not receive direct payments from insurance companies. But if insurance companies do not pay out to the hospitals, they do not pay the claims. If hospitals struggle to get their money and insurance companies keep turning down claims, then the hospitals don't have the money to pay their bills, which ends up not being able to pay Jackson Healthcare. So I asked the question, and they say, that's right. There's an indirect link, because I asked, has Jackson Healthcare got any direct link in any way to insurance companies? There's an indirect link. Staffing companies like Jackson get paid by hospitals, not insurers. But if a hospital faces major delays or shortfalls from unpaid insurance claims, their cash flow suffers, and they could slow down the struggle to pay their vendors, including staffing firms. It's not a direct tie like being in a claims process, but big payment problems at hospitals do ripple upstream. Most staffing agencies deal with this by having contracts that set payment terms and often factoring. So they got these contracts in place to get paid. Now, the reason I bring all that up, knowing that they are tied to, that he's making a direct tie to John King, the insurance commissioner, all right? Remember, we brought you the story of the hospital in Alabama, Jackson Hospital. No relation to Jackson Healthcare, but Jackson Hospital. And there was a Delaware, remember we showed you this, Delaware dark money group, Alabama Patient First, unleashed TV digital attacks on Blue Cross Blue Shield of Alabama, all right? And these attacks, and we talked about this the other day, as you can see, Jackson Hospital blames Blue Cross Blue Shield of Alabama for its collapse, but the bankruptcy records tell a different story. So they're in bankruptcy, right? Again, this is not Jackson Healthcare, it's the hospital. Jackson Hospital and Clinic in Montgomery, which bankruptcy filings has described as carrying between $100 million and $500 million in liabilities, filed a lawsuit last week against Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Alabama, claiming they are to blame for hospitals' impending closure. So if an insurance company in Georgia does not pay the claims, your insurance commissioner could put pressure on who operates in the state and put pressure on them when claims are not being paid to the hospitals that in turn pay their staffing agencies. Because remember this, all right? In total, this out-of-state group spent $328 in TV ads going against Alabama Patient First TV spent going against Blue Cross Blue Shield of Alabama. Now, the Blue Cross Blue Shield of Alabama claimed, based on the timing of the ads, we believe they are nothing more than an improper attempt by Jackson's investor lender to improperly influence litigation. Now remember, who is that investor? Who is that investor that they claim is putting pressure? Jackson Healthcare is a major national healthcare staffing and workforce solutions company. All right? Its parent company is Jackson Investment Group. Jackson Health and Clinic is a standalone. All right? They're not related. Jackson Healthcare has been a vendor for Jackson Hospital for more than 15 years, supplying clinical staff, especially traveling nurses, during shortages like the pandemic, right? How many of these rural hospitals around the state of Georgia are in debt to Jackson Healthcare? I'd like to know that. That is a question I have. I wonder how many of these hospitals around Georgia that are on the verge of collapse, on the verge of having to shut their doors, owe an enormous amount of money for staffing to Jackson Healthcare. It's just a question, all right? The loan that kept the hospital open to prevent immediate closure, Jackson Investment Group, Jackson Healthcare parent, stepped in and provided a debtor in possession loan. Initially $25 million, later $35 million. The high interest loan at 14, it could raise to 19%. The high interest loan is at 14%. It could go to 19%. The lender now sits in front of the repayment line in bankruptcy court. So, if we get hospitals all across the state filing bankruptcy, how much do they owe Jackson Healthcare? This is all a question, right? How much do they owe Jackson Healthcare? Will Jackson Healthcare enter a debtor in possession loan situation for them? Because right now, Jackson Healthcare, I don't know what the outcome is, but Montgomery, the city of Montgomery, was supposed to come up with $100 million and pay Jackson Healthcare off. So will taxpayers be on the short end? So my question, seriously, is, do you think it's a coincidence that John King, the insurance commissioner, endorsed Rick Jackson just because he asked? Now, to wrap that up in clarification, right? To wrap that up, to be clear, we do not know how many hospitals Rick Jackson Healthcare or Jackson Healthcare, how many hospitals in the state of Georgia they have a contract with. We don't know. And we don't know how far behind the payments are from some of these hospitals to Jackson Healthcare. And we don't know the financial situation. We just know that we could be, Jackson Healthcare talks about telemedicine. And let me tell you something. I'm not for telemedicine. I think it could be okay from time to time, if you can't get to a doctor, but you have to sit down, a doctor needs to see you. You need to have a doctor-patient relationship. You need to have a doctor that puts a stethoscope on your neck. Is that your carotid artery or whatever? You need to have a doctor that does that. You need to have a doctor that pushes on you. Do you feel pain here? I'm serious. And telemedicine cannot do it. They keep pushing telemedicine. And they say one of the biggest answers to rural healthcare is telemedicine. And I'm not saying you can't go and have an appointment on Zoom with a doctor, but I don't agree with it. That taking the place of rural healthcare. So do you think it's just a coincidence that John King, the insurance commissioner of the state of Georgia, endorsed Rick Jackson just because he asked? And I wonder when the unfolding of our statewide rural hospital issues will come to the top. And will Rick Jackson be governor when that happens? Will he? Just saying. Now, I want to show you something else, because will the Jacksons, and I say plural, because it looks to me like the Jacksons have no problem whatsoever. They're not separated. It doesn't seem like Melody Jackson and her husband, because I'll just show you this right here. As you can see, Melody Jackson, Rick Jackson gave John King both $7,600. Melody Jackson and Rick Jackson on the same day, 8/19/2022, same exact day, gave Brad Raffensperger $7,600. All right? And I really think they all know and are in cahoots on what they're doing. Now, I want to show you something before we get out today. If you're looking something up, you would go and you would look up, based on the query, it sounds like you are looking for information on business entity JIG. RJ Inc. You have RJ Inc. is Rick Jackson. JIG is Jackson Investment Group. You have Jackson Healthcare. Now, we've talked a lot about dark money. We've talked about buying endorsements. Would he spend an enormous amount of money? We've been very thorough on his lack of support for Donald Trump. This right here, this is called Right to Rise USA. This is Right to Rise USA. It was a prominent Republican super PAC created in January 2015. Keep that in mind. With one primary goal to support former Florida Governor Jeb Bush in his 2016 bid for the U.S. presidency. And here's the breakdown. The name, the moniker, Right to Rise. All right? The leadership, Jeb Bush actively raised funds for the PAC in the months before he formally announced his run. So, this is Jeb Bush. Got it? Now, here is Melody Jackson, right? Melody Jackson gave Jeb Bush $2,700. Melody Jackson gave Mitt Romney $2,500. Mitt Romney $2,500. That's his wife. When I say pay for influence, this is the way I see it. So Right here, pay attention to this very closely. Right to Rise USA, Jeb Bush, pay attention to this. Jackson Healthcare, $550,000. Now, he goes around bragging. That he gave Donald Trump $1 million. Now, to someone that's got $3 billion, okay, that's like leaving a $100 tip. Keep that in mind. The reason he keeps saying, I gave Donald Trump $1 million, and that's a lot of money. That's a lot of cheddar, as the kids say, right? That's what he keeps saying. But wait a minute. That's like for him going out and leaving a $100 tip. That's not a big deal to Rick Jackson. $50 million for a campaign? That's not a big deal to Rick Jackson. But he continues to go out and brag. Now keep this in mind, that after President Trump was inaugurated, in December of 2025, when he was doing his checklist, he was doing the checklist to run for governor. He forgot to do on the checklist, do I have any illegals working at my house painting the mulch, right? But he gave President Trump $1 million so he can go around and say it. Keep in mind, he gave Jeb Bush $550,000 to defeat Donald Trump. Are you registering that? This guy, in my full opinion, and I want that in the article. When we bring up the article, I want to make sure I get that in the article. In my full opinion, I do not think on any given day Rick Jackson likes anything about Donald Trump. Not at all. This guy gave Right to Rise $550,000, and I don't know why he turned around and gave 2011 later. Would the Jacksons, plural, would Rick Jackson pay for influence? I mean, because he is going around and he's making comments saying, well, you know, I think it's disgusting anybody, or I think it's terrible that anybody would use their office to enrich themselves. I think it's pretty black and white. Now, keep this in mind, all right? And I'm going to double down on this a little later. You're going to see this. Wait a minute. It's on the screen. In 2025, sorry about that, in 2015, he was preparing to put his president in place. In 2016, he didn't get that. So in 2016, he was preparing to put his president in place. In 2018, he was preparing to put his lieutenant governor in place. And in 2024, he was preparing to put his governor in place. So you need to understand, by 71 years old, and this is just the way I read the tea leaves, that if things would go the way Rick Jackson had planned, he'd have his president in place, he'd have his governor in place, not to speak of who else with all these political donations that he would have in place. That's how it works. Rick knows that. Rick knows that. So, would Rick Jackson buy influence? $550,000. Now, I want to play this because I want to show you something. And before we go, remember this right here. All right. The special delivery to Greg Dolezal, the bunny ears. And you've all been wondering. And don't forget that the Epstein rule. Now, you're hearing a lot about this, and we're going to talk about it tomorrow. I want to be able to do October surprise, right? What they call the Epstein rule. And the Senate passed a bill unanimously. The U.S. House, meanwhile, overwhelmingly voted to shelve their similar proposal. Let it be said that we are let's be better than that. Let's be better than that, said State Senator Randy Robinson, right? Let us be willing to have ourselves looked at. And that's what they call the Epstein rule in this bill, where they can do it open records. Now, the other day, for sexual harassment or anything like that. Now, the other day at the lieutenant governor's debate, Blake Tillery put this up. I just want to lay this out because we're going to go deep into it tomorrow. I have 2 debates I have to watch today. Blake Tillery brought this and said, release of my legislative human resources file and any other information concerning sexual harassment claims against me. All right. So Blake Tillery brought this and said, while we are waiting on the governor to sign the bill, maybe everybody on the stage will sign this release. And it is signed. You can see on the screen, it's signed by Blake Tillery, John F. Kennedy, Greg Dolezal, David Clark, and Steve Gooch. Those would be all of the candidates for a lieutenant governor there that are actually lawmakers, not all the candidates. But I want to remind you of something before we go too deep into this tomorrow. John Kennedy is an attorney, and so is Blake Tillery. But John Kennedy's an attorney, and he didn't sign this thinking that anything would be released. That's my opinion. He didn't sign this thinking anything in his file would be released pertaining to anything that dealt with sexual harassment claims. He's an attorney. He knows better. I have a feeling when these open records, you're going to hear about open records requests being made on this because of this. I've got a feeling when you hear that, what you're going to hear from the office, the legislative office in Atlanta, is these people that sign this can't alter open record rules and laws that are on the books. That's what I'm thinking. Watch and see. So we'll keep up with that. Now, tomorrow, I want to get time because I want to do what I think. I want to continue to do what I think are the reasons Rick Jackson and my gut are running. Now, this is Jeff Duncan, all right? Now, keep in mind, when Jeff Duncan ran for lieutenant governor, there were $3 million was put into a dark money advertising attack against his opponent. Dark money showed up again. $3 million. Who has that kind of change? Those are questions. But what I want to do is I want to show you yesterday Jeff Duncan's opening statement. If he can get on the ballot over and above Keisha Lance Bottoms.
Is next.
Thank you, Donna. You know, it's been nearly 30 years since the Democrats won the governor's race in Georgia, and we can all come up with complicated reasons why that is, but to be governor in Georgia, you've got to win more than the base. I'm building that coalition of Democrats, independents, and yes, even disgusted Republicans to not just win a primary, but but to win a general election for the first time in nearly 30 years. I'm staying laser focused on 3 issues: the affordability crisis, the healthcare crisis, and the Donald Trump crisis. Even Republicans wake up worried about those same 3 things every single day. My journey here looks a lot different than all of these individuals. My journey here started as a Republican, and now I'm standing here as a proud Democrat with the best toolkit I've ever had. A toolkit that's allowing me to better understand why we need to expand Medicaid, why we need to reform the heartbeat bill and repeal it, and why we need to take common sense decisions around gun legislation. Look, this journey has taken me to the DNC to speak on behalf of Kamala Harris. It's taken me on the campaign trail, and now it's proudly taking me here to run for governor as a proud Democrat.
Jeff Duncan, former lieutenant governor. Rick Jackson has a major investment into this guy, and Melanie Jackson has a major investment into this guy. Yes, they do. In the past when he ran for lieutenant governor. So, just saying, all right. Tomorrow I want to do that. I want to go into that because if you think I believe, and in fact I have some very dear friends in the state. No, I'm serious. They're very, very dear friends in the state that are they are voting for Rick Jackson. They've told me they're voting for Rick Jackson. Now, I'm undecided. So if you want to ask where I'm at, I'm undecided. And I have very good friends that are voting for Rick Jackson. And I told them, I said, look, when this election is done and over with, you're still going to be my dear friends. You are. And I got to put you on this list over here if you vote for Raffensperger. I might have to vet you a little more. Just a joke. But those are still going to be my very dear friends. But if you want me to believe, and I'm undecided in the governor's race, but if you want me to believe for 1 minute that Rick Jackson wants to be the next governor so he can get paid $185,000 a year, right? So he can get paid $185,000 a year to go to Atlanta, downtown Atlanta. You see the 47,000 acre estate he has with a full staff. You see this enormous $100 and some million corporate office complex, enormous. He lives in a beautiful area. And you want me to believe he wants to go downtown in Atlanta, right off MLK Boulevard, and he wants to go in the Gold Dome, and he wants to deal with everything that goes on for $185,000, and he wants the job. And I tell you why you're not going to get me to believe that, and you can't sell me that, and why I believe, and I'm allowed to believe, he's up to something. Because you know what? I've already said this. Rick Jackson's family. Now pay close attention to what I'm about to say. I think it's a real eye-opener. Rick Jackson's family does not share any time with him on the campaign trail. Rick Jackson's family is not with him. His wife, his son, they're not with him on the campaign trail. And yesterday, when Rick Jackson opened up with his statement on the debate, you didn't hear how he wants a better Georgia for his children or his grandchildren. You didn't hear that. You only heard a well-written statement that Rick Jackson looked down and could not look directly in the camera, that his campaign staff wrote for him so he could read it. That's what you looked at and you saw. That's what Rick Jackson did yesterday. And he delivered that. And throughout the campaign, he talked about foster kids, and he talks about how he grew up. He talks about all these things. And then when he closed yesterday, he didn't say, I'm a husband. I'm a father of 3 children, grown adult children, yes. But I have a house full of grandchildren, and I want to leave a better world for my grandchildren. I want to leave a better joy. Nothing. No real soul. Nothing comes from emotion, real soul. The only time I've ever seen the guy get emotional, get teared up, is when he talks about himself. And when he talks about how he had a hard time growing up and what difficulties he went through. That's all I ever hear. I mean, I don't know if he has any brothers and sisters. I don't know if he has any cousins. I don't know if he has any aunts and uncles. Nothing. All I know is he had such a terrible childhood. He was on hard times. He was in foster care. He struggled. That's when he gets teared up. You find me one time he's talked about a grandchild, one time he's talked about a child, one time he's even mentioned his wife. The man does not have interest in this job. It's all produced. So, hey, that's just me, BKP. I'll see you tomorrow, right? Yeah, we're going to take a brief break, and we'll be right back.
With my 35 years of experience, our team at U.S. Asset Management can deliver professional investment management, financial planning to help you target your goals, and even specialized divorce financial analysis if you need it. We are here to help you make better decisions with your money. Call U.S. Asset Management today, and let's get to work in your financial future.
The left is siding with illegals, attacking ICE, and fighting to let non-citizens vote. Republican Kelvin King is a graduate of the Air Force Academy, Air Force veteran, and conservative businessman. As Georgia's Secretary of State, Kelvin will put Americans first, root out corruption, clean up voter rolls, and restore confidence in our elections. The other candidates had their chance and failed. Republican Kelvin King for Secretary of State, leadership Georgia voters can trust.
Pro-Trump warrior Steve Gooch won't just cut property taxes in Georgia. He'll throw them straight in the wood chipper.
Senior citizens on fixed income shouldn't be forced from their homes. Neither should veterans who have served our country and fought for our freedoms. And neither should anyone else for that matter. Frankly, these crazy property taxes are un-American. I'll tear them to shreds. We'll make home ownership great again.
Steve Gooch for Lieutenant Governor. Toughest tax cutter Georgia's ever seen.
Do you already have your investments with Fidelity? I'm David Cross with U.S. Asset Management. Did you know that you can assign your investment management to my team and put my 35 years of experience to work for you? You simply assign us as your investment manager and you keep the same username and password. Professional management, and you get to work with someone who shares your values. Call U.S. Asset Management today and put us to work for you.